I'm Mike Uyak. I love to try new things, and I've had culinary adventures all around the world, as well as right at home. I've had really wonderful food, as well as some really horrible food. I'd like to share some of my adventures with you, and we'll see if I have what it takes to fix whatever goes wrong. This is Recipe Redemption. Greetings and salutations, everyone. Mike Uyak here. And for today's installment of The Market of Mystery, I wanted to delve a little bit into the life and works of 18th century Scottish poet Robert Burns, because tonight is Burns Night. And on Burns Night, we have haggis. Now, Robert Burns, as I said, 18th century poet, fairly renowned, almost like a national hero, because aside from just being a great poet, he did write a number of poems in the 18th century Scots dialect, and so, you know, obviously the locals loved him for that. One of the things that he is perhaps become famous for is his Address to a Haggis, a poem that he actually wrote to celebrate the lowly haggis. So I guess it becomes necessary first to discuss what a haggis is. And what it is a sheep's stomach that is stuffed, obviously cleaned out and all that good stuff, but stuffed with all the other organs from the sheep, plus suet, sort of the intra-abdominal fat that the organs come with. Pretty much, I'm pretty sure they just it just came along with the organs, and so it just became part of the recipe, along with oats and usually some spices. But that's pretty much it. Sometimes barley instead of oats, but usually oats. And then you boil the crap out of it, and some people will then roast it, just so you get this nice sort of brown exterior. Now, real traditional, honest-to-goodness Scottish haggis you can't get in the United States. Period. Reason being is that among all of the organ, because they basically take all of the organ meats, chop them all up, and stuff them into the stomach. Some of those organs, the U.S. government, the USDA, has decreed are not fit for human consumption ever, ever, ever. Never, never will you eat them. So, traditional haggis that has things like lung in it, you can't get here because the government has said, no, you will never eat it. And some connoisseurs of haggis claim that they can taste a difference. Like, oh yeah, this is definitely missing the lungs. I haven't had it, I don't know. There are certain specialty butcher shops that will actually sell something close. It's a haggis that's missing all of the prohibited things, but it's got everything else. The stomach's fine, you know, kidneys, heart, you know, I think spleen you probably do. All those organs are okay. You can use those, and so they'll make you a haggis that's pretty close. It's just missing a few of those prohibited organ meats. They're a little far afield for me. I did not get one because I didn't really feel like driving an hour just to get a haggis. When I can clicky and get one off the internet. Now, I sort of have a philosophy that if I try something for the first time and it's canned, and one could argue that the canned version of anything is probably the cheapest / least authentic / worst version of anything, of whatever it is, that it simply cannot be even close to being as good as fresh, made from scratch. if it's done right. So my philosophy is, if I have the canned version and it's pretty good, then when I actually get to Scotland and try a real haggis, I'll probably love it. So something that I want to point out, I'm a little leery about these. So the first one that I ordered, I clicked on, I didn't think about it, I just saw haggis, canned haggis, buy. This one is made with sirloin beef, and I didn't notice that. And this company actually makes a lamb version. I didn't happen to notice that until after I had already ordered the silly thing. Let's see, where's the ingredients? This has sirloin beef, hydrated pin oats, so oats, beef liver, beef suet, onion powder, onions, salt, kitchen bouquet, which includes caramel color, oddly enough, vegetable base, interesting, spices. So it's all beef, and there's a little bit of beef liver. That's that'll give it that organy flavor that you're probably expecting out of a haggis. But yeah, not really. It's really more like stew when you come right down to it. So I hopped online, and unfortunately, of this brand, the lamb wasn't available. So I got this really dented can of traditional skinless haggis. It makes me begin to wonder about these. Now this has lamb hearts, oats, pork fat, and it just says pork. I don't know how much or what. Lamb liver, and then spices. So this at least has lamb in it. Now one thing that I'm noting is neither of these say they have stomach. So I'm beginning to think that this is probably going to come out of the can looking like dog food and not like a big sausage like it's supposed to, because it's supposed to be encased in the stomach, and you bring it to the table and it's steaming and hot, and there's a whole big production where, bagpipe player comes along and they come and present it to you, and then they pull out this big Herkin knife and slash it open at the table in front of you. So it's like you're disemboweling the haggis right there at the table. I get the feeling I'm not going to be able to do that with these, because it's beginning to sound like they're both cans of stew. But let's have a look and see. So yeah, this happened. Definitely not encased in anything. It's meat. It's sort of somewhere between like corned beef hash and cat food. I'm a little disturbed by this. The beef one here obviously is darker in color, but they both have about the same texture, similar aroma. They're spiced similarly. So I guess that's the one sort of authentic thing here, is that the spicing is probably pretty close. And it has some of the components of a real haggis, but I'm a little frightened, but we're going to go for it. And in the spirit of Burns Night, I'm going to take a sort of 1970s approach. Remember the old saying, if you can't be with the one you love, love the one you're with. If you can't have a real haggis, and this is what you've got, celebrate Burns Night anyway with your proto-haggis. So in that vein, I think it only appropriate to speak the words of our poet Robert Burns in his Address to a Haggis. I will apologize right now to those of you of Scottish descent. The 18th century Scots words that Robert Burns uses in this poem, many of them cannot be pronounced without a Scottish accent. And once you're in the Scottish accent, you might as well just do the whole thing in the Scottish accent. So, since my Scottish accent is basically derived from multiple screenings of Braveheart and Shrek, my apologies. Address to a Haggis. Fair for your honest sonsy face, great chieftain of the puddin' race. Aboon them ye tak your place, page, tripe, or therm. Weel are ye worthy of our grace, as lang's my arm. The groaning trencher, there ye fill, your hurdles like a distant hill. Your pin wad help to mend the mill in time of need, while through your pores the dews distill like amber bead. His knife, with rustic labour dicht, uncut ye up with ready slicht. It's not as dramatic as it should be. Trenching your gushing entrails bright like ony ditch, and then, oh, what a glorious sight, warm, reeking rich. Then horn for horn they stretch and strive, they'll take the hindmost on they drive, till a' the wheel-swelled kites belive are bent like drums. The old goodman maist like drive, bethanket hums. Is there that o' his French ragout, or olio that wad stow a so, or fricassee wad mak her spew what perfect schooner, looks down with sneering scornful view on such a dinner. Poor devil, see him o'er his trash, as feckless as a withered rash. His spindle shank o' good whiplash is never knit. Through bloody flood or field to dash, oh how unfit. But mark the rustic Haggis fed, the trembling earth resounds his tread. Clap in his wally knave a blade, he'll make it whistle, and arms and legs and head will sned like taps of thistle. Ye powers, what mak mankind your care, and dish them out their bill of fare. Old Scotland wants nice stinking ware that jops in luggies, but if ye wish her grateful prayer, give her a Haggis. Again, my apologies. And now, I want chicken, I want liver, sorry. More and more, this reminds me of corned beef hash. This is quite salty. It's kind of unfortunate that all they say is spices. There's, well, they do have dehydrated onion, malt extract, spices, onion powder. There's something else in here that almost gives it sort of a Christmassy flavor. It's not nutmeg. I'm not sure what it is. But the overall flavor and texture is very like corned beef hash. You know, real honest to goodness traditional haggis, I think you would expect to have more chunks. Chunks of the various organ meats. And this is, you know, ground down to a fairly fine paste and then mixed in. And so really the oats, the steel cut or pin oats, are really the main texture component in here, because they're whole. You get these little chewy bits. The beef version actually does have a more robust flavor. It's a stronger, meaty flavor. I mean, there's just beef sirloin and beef liver. That's basically the meat. So fairly strong beefy flavor, and it's very definitely beef and not lamb. The lamb version is a lot more subtle in flavor. Not the worst thing I've put in my mouth, but once again, that's not saying much. So yes, I am a little disappointed that this didn't come out as an actual sausage. Essentially, that's really essentially what a haggis is. It's a sausage. So I'm a little disappointed that it didn't come out that way. This isn't bad, but I think I need to actually try an authentic, honest to goodness, haggis instead of Purina Scotsman chow. But to sort of redeem this a little bit, Burns Night is not complete with haggis alone. You need other Scottish dishes. So I'm going to accompany this with the traditional neeps and tatties, which is essentially a mash made from neeps or turnips, which is what they call rutabagas. Here in the United States, we actually call them rutabagas. In Scotland, they call them neeps, and in the rest of the UK, for whatever reason, they call them swedes. I think one reference I found is, says that is because the Swedish grew rutabagas at some point, and that's where the British got them from primarily, and so they called them Swedes. Weird. But in any case, the recipes that I've been able to find for neeps and tatties are actually, they seem kind of bland. They're fairly simple. It's basically, you know, boiling them, mashing them with a little bit of salt, sometimes butter or a little bit of dairy, and that's pretty much it. And typically mashed separately. So you have a little dollop of yellow mashed rutabaga and a little dollop of white mashed potato, and that's it. And they're not really seasoned very heavily or much in the way of extra flavors. I like extra flavors. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to make the neeps and tatties, but I'm going to add roasted garlic and shallot to that, and a good bit of salt. And I'm going to mash them together, and I'm also going to use a little dairy just to give it richness. But I guess I've been, you know, being an American, my tastes run toward the saltier, fattier, more flavorful. We just expect more out of our food. And a lot of these traditional recipes were basically people cooking with what they had, and so they didn't have a whole lot of spices, and they were, you know, spices were for special occasions, and so okay, I'll go with that, but I don't need to be that traditional. So in addition to the quasi-traditional neeps and tatties, I'm also going to just dice some up, oven roast them with some olive oil, garlic powder, onion powder. Because I tend to like roasted root vegetables better than mashed. Especially if there's not like any gravy or anything involved. Although, if I was eating it along with this provides all the salt that I need. So, I suppose there is that. The other accompaniment, or I guess another course to a meal on Burns Night, is a soup course of some sort. So there's Cullen skink, which is sort of a fish stew. There's Scotch broth, and then there's a soup called cock-a-leekie, which aside from being a fun name to say, is basically chicken soup. It's cock, as in chicken, rooster, an older bird, so you can stew it for a while, and leeks, cock-a-leekie, and other things. Usually barley as sort of a binding agent to it, to give it a little more body. I'm actually going to use brown rice because it's what I got. But otherwise, it's essentially a chicken soup. You boil the chicken, you take it out, you separate all the meat from the bones, and set that aside for later. And basically, once you're done boiling the leeks and some onion and celery and spices, or herbs, I should say, once you're done actually cooking those, you spoon it over some of the shredded chicken into a bowl. Done. Simple. Oh, and add the rice, obviously. It's a very simple recipe, but, you know, classic. With a little twist because I'm using rice. So, let's get started on that. So, with a lovely bowl of cock-a-leekie soup and some delightful neeps and tatties, both mashed as well as oven roasted, as an accompaniment to our somewhat disappointing, but otherwise still generally tasty haggis, proto-haggis, quasi-haggis, faux haggis. Actually made a fairly decent dinner for Burns night. So, as inauthentic as it may be, it's still our celebration of Scottish cuisine. Good stuff, actually. And I look forward to actually trying a real, honest-to-goodness haggis. If someone wants to ship me one, I won't tell. Otherwise, or if someone wants to ship me to Scotland, I will also accept that. But otherwise, our first foray into Scottish cuisine was pretty satisfactory, all things considered. We'll definitely be exploring some more down this particular aisle. But in the meantime, I'd like to thank you for watching. Again, this is Mike Uyak for Recipe Redemption, and I'll see you next time. It's Burns night. If it's not Scottish, it's crap!